Assalamu alaikum. My name is Habib Khadri, and welcome to the Global Association of Islamic Schools. Today, we have our Scholar Series, and we're really excited to have someone from the land down under. And mashallah, hopefully, this is going to be a great opportunity to us to learn some more information about some of the amazing things that are happening in the country of Australia, but that could benefit all of us throughout the world, all of us fellow educators. To get a better understanding of who this person is that we are going to invite in a few minutes, I wanted to bring my partner over here who's doing on the backstage, making sure everything goes well for this event. Imran Nanawala, are you here? Are you awake?
Barely. Assalamu alaikum.
All right, Imran, I just wanted to kind of give us an idea that we have our guest here today. So I was wondering if you could kind of give us a quick background of who this person is for our Scholar Series. And then from there on, we want to go on for another half an hour to 45 minutes to kind of get a good idea about some of the amazing things that are happening there and some of their research.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction. And today we're going to have Brother Dylan Chown on. He's a member of the team of the Center for Islamic Thought and Education, University of South Australia. He's also a curriculum advisor for teacher education and professional learning short programs, including the groundbreaking Graduate Certificate in Education, a postgraduate accredited teacher education program based on Islamic pedagogy tailored for Islamic school educators. Dylan is also a co-author and steering committee member. And without further ado, I will bring Brother Dylan on.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you, sir?
Alhamdulillah, I'm really well. Thank you for having me. It's good to see you.
No, it's a pleasure. And again, truly, what time is it there?
10 p.m. here.
10 p.m. All right, so 7 a.m. here, right? So we're completely on the opposite sides here, but we really want to thank you so much for taking your time, and hopefully you could stay awake for at least another hour or so. And I'm going to try to keep myself, just to stay, kind of fresh here as early in the morning. But what we wanted to kind of do is take some time to kind of get an idea. One of the things we kind of thought about, as we kind of on WhatsApp, we're going back and forth. The idea of the topic was, the toward Islamic school renewal, and especially in Australia, Islamic schools, how coming together and having a shared vision. So I wanted to kind of talk to you about that and pick your brain. First and foremost, before we even kind of get started, how many Islamic schools are there in Australia?
Great question. 46 main campus Islamic schools across the country, but many of them have multiple campuses. So you could say up to about 70. We're the fastest growing school type in the independent school sector in Australia.
Mashallah. All right. And so now you and so is also just like many, do you guys have like an association that you guys, just to kind of give some backgrounds before we get into your
Sure.
stimulus paper you guys have put together? Is there association that you guys all kind of are under, even though I know everyone's independent, but just like in Chicago, we have like Cincinnati Council of Islamic Schools in North America, Islamic School League of America, anything like that, Brother Dylan?
Yeah, great question. And it is interesting to see across the context, isn't it? In Australia, we have the Islamic Schools Association of Australia. They act as a representative body, and they play a key role, I would say, here in Australia. We've been going for 4 decades, and the Islamic Schools Association of Australia are active. We work in partnership and in collaboration on a number of things with them. So we, being the Centre for Islamic Thought and Education, we're part of the School of Education at the University of South Australia, and we work in collaboration with, because we're Muslims, it's obviously important that we use as many acronyms as possible. So for us, it's ISA. I think you've got CISNA and ISLA and all of those acronyms, but for us, it's ISA, the Islamic Schools Association of Australia. And we have, even in the stimulus paper, we've tried to articulate, I think often when we're talking about who we are, we talk about it with reference to how other people envision. So if you look here in Australia in Catholic schooling, they have a very top-down structured approach. Obviously, from the Pope all the way down to their religious hierarchy and structure to their schools.
Mm-hmm.
With us, we talk about, that beautiful concept of unity and diversity.
Mm-hmm.
So of those 46 single campus sites or main campus sites and up to 70 schools and growing, each of them have local visions and local education philosophies and are obviously deeply in service to their local communities. But that spirit of collaboration, that spirit of collegiality is facilitated through groups like ISA, and we would like and hope that inshallah CITE also plays a role in that.
Gotcha. So what was like the whole need for this stimulus paper? What caused it? And then and then I have a follow up after that. Like, okay, why? And then how did you guys collaborate? Like, how many people were part of this whole process?
Look, I don't think we're exaggerating when we say it's possibly the largest collaboration to date that we've seen in Australian Islamic schooling. And let me, things are more than numbers, but let me throw some numbers at you. It took 7 years to collaborate and bring this together and co-author. It went across 6 annual Australian Islamic schooling conferences, of which CITE and ISA, or CITE is the host or the convener of the conference in partnership with ISA. So 6 annual conferences. We did 2 retreats, one with Brother Fazil Arain, who's an executive principal here in Australia, and one who you know very well, dear sister Afifa Saeed, who's from up your way in America, and she facilitated a retreat for us. We had a 13-person steering committee across states of Australia, and we subjected it to 14 national reviewers who are scholars, academics, educational leaders, interdisciplinary, and 16 international reviewers. So those numbers, I think give a picture, a snapshot, if you like, at the level of collaboration. As to the NIA, or what sort of birthed this big idea, which is what it was in the beginning, a big idea, we realised that, subhanAllah, we've been going for 4 decades. We feel that there's never been a more exciting time to be in Australian Islamic schooling, or we could even take that globally. There's never been a more exciting time to be Islamic schooling globally. We also thought, subhanAllah, we had noticed that other communities had their own, what we would call a whole of field document that's either sharing with other people who they are and what they value, what they aspire for, and also talking internally to their own community. And we noticed that Catholic schooling had one, Anglican schooling had one, Lutheran schooling had one, our Indigenous communities here in Australia had them. And we thought it's really, we've overachieved in many ways in terms of being essentially the new kids on the block. We were the last of the faith-based schools and communities to really establish Islamic schools in this context. And in a few short decades, which is a blink of an eye when we consider the history of schooling in Australia, we see that our schools are high performing. We see our graduates doing well, contributing civically and socially. And we thought it's time to really articulate who we are. And it's that whole thing, when you don't give your own voice to share who you are in your authentic voice, then sadly that void can be filled by other people sharing what you are and who you are. And we thought we've left that open So initially, when we looked at those whole of field documents of other faith communities, we were inspired, no doubt, but we started to really deeply sit with what we wanted to do with this project. And in the end, we really felt like primarily this document was it's inward facing and outward facing. So we really felt that this document was in its, I guess, primarily to our own selves, to articulate who we are, what we aspire for, what our aspirations are in our own authentic voice, and to develop that sort of common language that's emerged over the last 40 years in practice. And that was the original NIA. Of course, it does act outward facing too. People that want to know, well, tell us about Islamic schools. This inaugural stimulus paper, which we call 1.0, which is an ode to the fact that it remains open, that it's going to be built upon, inshallah.
So it's always ongoing. This is good. But for that first initial, that 1.0, what were some of the benefits? Like, what were the benefits? And then, with that follow-up would be like, how are you going to use this, right? So now, so let's kind of kind of like let's go into this, because
Okay.
now the idea of sharing is caring, because what you learn we can learn, and then if you do well, we could all do well, then inshallah ta'ala, because this whole idea is a global a goal, inshallah ta'ala. So may Allah subhanahu wa reward you. So give us some more here now. So what were the benefits, and how are we going to be using? How are you guys using this?
Great questions. Well, one of the really concerns of the steering committee in the beginning was, we don't want this to be a document that gathers dust on the shelf. How can it be something that's a living document in our schools and actively shaping practice? So this was very much at the forefront of the minds of the steering committee and shaping this from the beginning. Perhaps in answering that question, I can share a little bit about the what, so we understand what's in the stimulus paper, and then I could share perhaps how it's being used and what potential benefits. So the stimulus paper is made up of 3 sections. Section A offers 12 essential pillars for Islamic schooling in Australia. And this really, pillars are, we understand, of course, in our tradition, the importance of pillars. Anything that you're trying to build upon requires those foundational anchors or pillars, and the stimulus paper offers 12. It speaks to educational policy in Australia, so, government policy, national educational goals and things of that nature, and I'll talk about the benefit of that. In Section B, the section's made up of 3 parts, our own take from our own tradition, our own philosophy of education on how we see our learners, how we see learning, and how we see leading learning and the importance of that. And in Section C offers a strategy for renewal. We saw the stimulus paper very much as a roadmap for renewal. And I guess at that point, I want to differentiate. Our Islamic schools have performed very well. We've got excellent, as all across the world we see, and you're one of them, mashallah, we see, outstanding educational leaders who've become masters, mashallah, of leading their schools and masters of policy and compliance. We understand how to meet accreditation requirements. We understand how to fulfill all of our responsibilities, but still we wanted to, I guess, stimulate reflection, cultivate reconnection with the original intention and aspirations of those pioneering and visionary pioneers in every context. We have our own pioneers here in Australia, as we do all over the world in local contexts. And we wanted then to, inspire renewal. And we saw this as a roadmap for renewal. We saw this as a resource for leaders and educators. In Section C, what we've termed a strategy for whole school renewal, we've really led with this notion of action research, which, and I won't bore people because academics are notorious for boring people with fancy names and things, but essentially the aim was to instill a culture of inquiry within our schools, to develop professional learning communities within schools, across schools, nationally, internationally, to really position ourselves as researchers and inquirers of our own communities and our own practice. And the action research, I guess, is a pushback against, if I can say, dominant normative approaches to schooling, but that don't consider the distinct and unique purpose of Islamic education or the local needs of students and communities. So we saw that this roadmap for renewal would prepare leaders and students to name up their own challenges within their community. The shared vision does not subsume local visions, and that was really important to us. So this brings us together on what is common. It gives us that shared vision. It provides that shared language for practice and for discussing and dialoguing, but it doesn't subsume local visions and local education philosophies, and protects that vibrancy that we see within our field.
Good. So now, when you had these sections A, B, and C, and now kind of looking into, were there categories, things that you've kind of noticed and say, look, hey, here are 4 or 5. When you have your 12 essential pillars, can you share some of those just to kind of give us an idea? Like, I know, we only have about 45 to maybe an hour max, but just kind of giving us an idea and say, hey, that special, let's just take each section for a second. Like, so, hey, 12 pillars, can you share some of them and saying, hey, what were the findings, and hey, how does that now help our schools in Australia, for the next 5-6 years, and saying, hey, these are some areas that we need to really consider and think about?
I think we put up front, we wanted to be brave, and we wanted to be authentic and explicit and transparent. These sorts of descriptors were really important to us. So the first three of the essential 12 pillars, the first three, number one, we named up faith formation. So we put up front, we're not hiding the fact that a central purpose and focus, central priority would be a better word. Essential priority within our Islamic schools is faith formation and to nurture that. The second one was the importance of an Islamic worldview, and we provided an articulation that's accessible, inshallah, that's relevant to leaders and educators, and that talks about the importance that the absolute, that's the foundation to what we do, our ways of knowing and our ways of doing in Islamic schools. The third one, which we love to talk about, the first rule of Islamic pedagogy is you must always discuss it. It's one of our mantras we've become famous for. But the third one is Islamic pedagogy. And we saw Islamic pedagogy as a distinct, as we do in Australia, as a distinct philosophy of education. And Islamic pedagogy plays a really foundational, it's one of the priorities and one of the pillars, but it runs through this stimulus paper, because when we look at the purpose within an Islamic pedagogy as a distinct philosophy of education, it really gives us our distinction. And that was a key part of the thinking. We've been through the establishment phase in Islamic schools, the pioneers, and we're standing on their shoulders now. Right. We've been through the belonging phase, which was the challenging years of the late 90s and 2000s, the post 9/11 era, where, there was lots of pressure. There was outward Islamophobia at times, but still Islamic schools thrived. They became very open places, opening up to other communities, students serving, etc., in that belonging phase. This stimulus paper is about leading a collective effort towards our own distinction. So we're sort of defining what distinction means for us, collectively and locally, inshallah. So there are a couple of features in Section A.
Yeah, no, and at least is there? So you have the first issue, which is important. Now, I know that we might have that. Can you just share with some of the viewers 4, 5, kind of quick, maybe just kind of small, high level, what the other pillars were, if possible?
Sure. Other pillars is the centrality of language. We saw Arabic as a liturgical language, a language for worship and practice of all learners. For some learners, a mother tongue, and for other learners, a language in addition to English. So we saw Arabic as one of the central pillars. We saw Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and perspectives. We thought that this stimulus paper, that notion of self-determination for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families and communities, and it has a beautiful and rich history of First Nation peoples in Australia and Islam that predated European contact in Australia. And there are families and students in our schools that are both Muslim and Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, and we saw that as a really important pillar of upholding and supporting and advancing self-determination for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. So we saw culture as important. We saw culture as what connects us. We saw our diversity as our strength. Diversity in the Quran talks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's divine creativity. And we wanted to put up front, we don't want to use the language of diversity and deficit. That's one of our greatest strengths, and we value it, we cherish it, and we actively look to be responsive to the diversity within our field. So there are a couple of other pillars, if you like, of the 12 essential. And in Section B, I think it really, I mean, every Islamic school, and I don't know the context of America, you could sort of share with me, but while we value our unity and diversity, we value the fact that we're in service to the local. We know our local communities. We know the needs, inshallah, of our learners. And we're really, we're part of something bigger. We're part of an Ummah mindset of understanding that we're part of something regionally, nationally, globally, etc. but we are in service to the local. But every Islamic school, and particularly as an educational leader, we appreciate the huge amount of capacity it takes to translate complex, dominant education policy, to educate our community in our rich educational heritage and tradition that's a living one. So not about teaching about the great educational feats of the past as if that's in static or past, but drawing from that rich educational heritage and tradition and the principles and the values and the immutable concepts, and seeing how that actually actively and innovatively advances the present. And that's a huge undertaking for every individual school to set out to complete and master themselves. We saw this stimulus paper as a resource that the local can draw on when they're inducting new educators into their school community, which, you know, we've got new educators every year. It's a resource to support the leadership development. It's a resource to develop practices, ever changing. I mean, we see the impact of AI in education broadly. So what does AI mean? So we don't provide the answers to everything, as in the collective, but the stimulus paper provides that foundational grounding of our own worldview, our own philosophy of education, and immutable educational concepts, how we're going to view our learners. Learning, unfortunately, I can speak in the Australian context, schools have become very focused on literacy, numeracy, and standardised tests. And this alone, there's no harm, of course, in performing and achieving, but this alone is not going to equate to a full and wholesome and holistic vision or purpose of education for us. So some of the resources in Section B are really providing the foundational elements to any approach within education. You draw, I don't know, in America, you might have dominant, whether it's Mazzano's high intensity teaching tips or, you know, whomever else is coming up with all of this is grounded in something. All of it is assuming a particular view of young people, children, students. All of it's assuming a certain purpose of education, and none of that usually considers the needs of Islamic schools, the distinct purposes of Islamic schools, and the needs of Muslim learners. So that was part of the function, I think, of the stimulus paper, to support schools as they attend to these at the local level.
Right. So you know, I really like that view of like learners, then learning, you know, which I kind of saw on your kind of notes, and then leading learning, right? So it's all facets of kind of making sure, hey, the people that are you know, and in the business world, they call them customers. For us, you know, are really the individuals that whole purpose that we're in this field, right? But then making sure at all facets that, hey, even the person who is teaching them, you know, are we looking at all aspects, making sure we're properly training them, and also, you know, looking at the philosophy of how we're doing this. So
and that's the core, isn't it, Brother Habib? Like, that's the core of what we do. And Dr. Trevor, then, who's known to many people in this community, I'll assume, he said something quite amazing once. He said that seeing that we have prayer operating in our schools, or that girls are wearing hijab, or that religious practice and worship is there, this is very, very important. And this is this is foundational, of course. But it's not surprising we're an Islamic school. These things, nor would you be surprised if you were talking about a general, you know, a school in a general space, and you would say that there were desks and chairs. So for us, we, alhamdulillah, many Islamic school communities have found a beautiful way of accentuating and heightening that sense of community through communal worship, through, you know, the various ways that our Muslimness manifests. But if that is not shaping learning, the way we look at our learners, learning, and the way we lead, then unfortunately it's Islam is somewhere, but not all the way infused. And we feel that the stimulus paper was a way of saying, well, Islam has a rich educational heritage and tradition and pedagogical tradition that can shape all facets of an Islamic school. And we really wanted to centre those core of learners learning and leading learning, such that it would shape the big three in schooling: curriculum, pedagogy, assessment, in its distinct ways.
Gosh. And now, like, as this whole process, when did you guys, was it just last year that you got everything was finalized? So it was like a whole year process?
That's a great. Well, this is the journey now. So the journey is ongoing. So there was
Okay.
the first part of the journey, which was the 7 years it took to collaborate and to write this and collate it and to collect it. It was launched last year in August, alhamdulillah, August at the annual Australian Islamic Schooling Conference in Melbourne. And now we're on the journey of really trying to walk with this in our schools. So in Australia, we have a monthly webinar series where we're unpacking aspects of the stimulus paper.
Mashallah.
But us at CITE, one of the things that we've been committed to, we've established a professional learning community with 8 Islamic schools. Of those 8, they're across states. Some of them have multiple campuses, up to 3 or 4 campuses. And we've wanted to take the journey with those 8 schools over the next 12 months, 12 to 24 months, next couple of years. We've already had an existing relationship with them, and to be working with them with the stimulus paper and supporting them in Section C, which is the whole school strategy, really instilling a culture of inquiry within our schools. We dream, and this is the big dream. I don't know, in America, is Montessori one of those things that we must sort of start talking in very romantic language when we talk about Montessori? And the first rule of Montessori is that you must always tell everyone about it. And we have this here about Montessori, and everyone pays more for it, right? Because it's special. Okay. Now, I'm not necessarily, looking at it uncritically, but what I love about Montessori is that it has articulated what we love and what we value. We're not promoting Montessori, but this is as an analogy. They have articulated a clear philosophy, and that philosophy shapes everything they do in a Montessori learning environment. So how they interact with young people, how they create the learning environment in that space, how they train their teachers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, we have within our tradition something that is drawn from the Quran and drawn from the best of all pedagogists, our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have a living tradition that is just there for us to benefit us and to benefit humanity, for that matter, subhanAllah. And we wanted to say, if we can articulate our philosophy, there's that big word, Islamic pedagogy, as a distinct philosophy, which answers the big questions for us. Why are we learning? What's the purpose of schooling? What's the purpose of our learning? Who are we as educators? As a Muslim educator, who am I? Or as an educator in an Islamic school, how do I look at my learners? And how do I envision my educational practice? The curriculum? How do we look at curriculum? We feel that in time, this effort of distinction is about, just like other communities or other people that can stand on a philosophy and it's shaping practice, we can see in our schools that our schools will not only become knowledge consuming, so that we're producing, we're working on curriculum knowledge, we're sharing that with students and assessing, but we believe our Islamic schools can become knowledge producing sites on distinct educational practice. If Montessori or any other Reggio Emilia or Steiner or whatever else, Catholic pedagogy or indigenous pedagogy, whatever else we could name, could there be a more significant contribution, not only to our own Islamic schools, but education broadly, than our own beautiful education philosophy drawn from the Quran and the best of all teachers, Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's something, I think that's a big dream and a big vision, inshallah.
So now, and I think you hit a good point, right? You go, you get the research, you're putting things together, you kind of have like a roadmap, or at least that process. And now the big thing is implementation, making sure everyone buys into it. So it looks like you got the leadership now. How do we make, what are the processes of making sure now the teachers, as you have the leaders, and saying, hey, and I know you guys worked on teacher training and alhamdulillah, even like a certificate program. So is that inculcated in this process too, of saying, hey, here's a 3-year program, we're going to be doing these workshops at a certain time, just to kind of have people this whole thought process. I think is so fascinating of kind of taking it from start and to finish and understanding it's still a journey. So which is great. So you kind of give us some more on that, Sheikhs?
I think that's a really good question. And I think it's one, because we all have to think about how that would look in our own context. I can say in Australia, and I'd really like to stress that all Islamic schools are pursuing, are on some sort of journey of renewal and pursuing their own distinction. Not necessarily all in deep collaboration with us, and that's like we're not looking to. The Islamic Schools Association, of course, is the representative body. We see ourselves in service to the field, so there are many schools that have their own strategies and pursuing that distinction. This stimulus paper is open to all. The annual conference is an open conference. It's not one where we're coming to. It's open for the sharing of ideas, and that could be some of the ways that the field is staying connected. But I'll give you an example, a specific example of a school that we work with intensely, and I'll sort of describe it at the different levels they've done. So the school, and I think it's okay that I name the school. The school is Malik Fahd Islamic School, which is a school in Sydney, Australia. A large Muslim population in amongst these areas. And Malik Fahd Islamic School is, a very well-known and deeply respected school within the Australian context. Now, when they set out on their journey of renewal, we set out together. So we've been partners with this Islamic school. The first thing they did is they have an amazing board of governors, and a board of governors that deeply understood and had the same aspiration of renewal and walked the journey. So they weren't just crunching numbers and there was a disconnect. They were on this journey, fully supportive of it. We had an educational principal who came into the project initially as the head of faith, and then the second year of the project became the executive principal of this school. And his leadership, mashallah, has played a key role in their journey. The third thing they did, and you alluded to the graduate certificate in Islamic education. For us, this is a postgraduate program that essentially gives us as educators, you want for your brother and sister what you want for yourself, right? Sure. And all of us, many of us, went through either a Bachelor of Education degree in a mainstream Western secular university, and some of us went perhaps to an Islamic university in another context, and then have come and done bridging secular degrees here. Now, the one thing we didn't get is that grounding in an Islamic worldview, that grounding in an Islamic philosophy of education, that grounding in what we would call an Islamic pedagogy. That was the missing piece. So Malik Fahd Islamic School have put through 42 educators through this program to create a critical mass of educators with deep knowledge and skills and renewed dispositions that, if you like, are the leaders of that at the local level. So it's an investment in their own teams. The remaining of the up to 300 educators who are in that school are going through a short course with us to expose them to Islamic pedagogy, to share that common language. And then we've walked with them in a journey for 3 years, utilising, among other things, the stimulus paper as they've renewed their educational policy frameworks. We can't expect to plug and play. We can't expect to grab a restorative justice behaviour management model off the shelf and think that that's going to realise our aims and end goals for what we see for behaviour, for character. We can't expect to take Mazzano's high-intensity teaching and expect that on itself is going to give the distinct approach to teaching and learning. We have the confidence to draw from educational research, but be critical. None of that research is considered or ever studied the context of an Islamic school. None of them has considered the needs of Muslim learners. So we take that research critically, and we've been developing our own, and not just our centre, other scholars and academics across Australia. We've been developing our own research within the field. And internationally, Global Association of Islamic Schools, the Dr. Farah Ahmeds of the world in the UK, the Dr. Mara Dakours in the north. I've just realised, Brother Habib, I made the mistake of mentioning two, and there's so many. So forgive me for naming two.
Well, may Allah reward all the researchers, but that's what we need to do. That's good. So Hamla, we're at that point. We've tried to keep these to 30 to 40 minutes. What are some we kind of looked at this. There are a few things here. First and foremost, if people wanted to read this whole paper, is it something they have to buy? Is it online or website? If you kind of give us some more information to our viewers to really we really want to know this research that has happened and kind of get a better understanding of it. Where did they go?
Sure. The stimulus paper, absolutely free. Okay, so no, if anyone's charging,
educators like that word,
yeah.
FREE. So go ahead and tell me, when you said free, I'm more excited now. So tell us more.
If anyone's charging, let us know. That's a problem. It's absolutely free. It's accessible via the Centre for Islamic Thought and Education website, and I'll share a link with the team so that can be disseminated. It's downloadable. There's the stimulus paper itself, and within that we have some of the educational frameworks that are in there. There as posters. So we're seeing increasingly Islamic schools in Australia, which really warms the heart. We go and visit our Islamic schools, and many of these posters are seeing themselves in the all-important common room, we call it here, or staff rooms, for people to look at. And if I can put a call out, Brother Habib, it's not, sometimes the journey is important as the destination. So we've landed on stimulus paper 1.0, but I think the lesson that I think we can share, and it's a huge amount for me to be representing the best I can, inshallah, the collaborative effort that this was. But the journey was as important as the landing on 1.0, because taking the journey together, collaborating, dialoguing, sharing voices, trying to, opening it to examination, opening it up and being willing to take critique and constructive feedback, which we did and will continue to do, inshallah. That has meant that those that have come along the journey are better positioned to actually enact that. And that was the lesson. So for those that are listening in their own context, and I know whether it's South Africa, England, North America, Canada and America, New Zealand, anywhere else, these are the contexts that I'm familiar with in research, but anywhere in the world where we see our Islamic schools, the local context counts. And there's Professor Abdullah, our director, Professor Muhammad Abdullah, and one of the co-authors of the stimulus paper, he always says, and I believe this, alhamdulillah, there's no shortage of talent in any Muslim community. So please feel free to borrow from our stimulus paper, set the intention to improve on it, take it and run with it and improve on it, critique it. That's all part of the journey. But I think the lesson I'd like to share is that we hope that this may be an example for other contexts to marshal their own resources, their own voices, and to take their communities, whether it be local or national, on a journey for their own whole of field document that really speaks to who they are and what they aspire to. And I hope that's, inshallah, a worthwhile example, inshallah, and Allah accept if it is.
Inshallah ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless the work you all are doing over there. I need you to give a good big salams to one of my buddies back in the days, Dr. Nadeem, inshallah ta'ala. We ask that you guys make dua for him and his family and for all the educators in Australia. So all of you here, please make sure for Allah bless the work they're doing, that hopefully that work they're doing is also sharing with us. So Brother Dylan, even though it's for free, you're going to get a lot of Jannah money, inshallah. All the brothers over there, inshallah, for the
and what the team, you're right. It's I mentioned Professor Abdullah. We really should make mention of the incredible thought leadership and leadership in general of our brother Nadeem Memon, who's well known to many. He was born Canadian, but we've claimed him here in Australia. He's as Aussie as Vegemite now, Nadeem Memon. And he's done a fantastic his contribution here. We are blessed, and he played a key role in this journey. Alhamdulillah.
Allah reward all of you guys. But all right, so everyone, please, as you know, again, that there is hopefully we're going to get the information, send out the link through the GAIS WhatsApps, and then we'll send out the email to everyone, inshallah ta'ala. And then in this way, we'll hopefully get to see each other. Hopefully maybe, and then just a heads up, July will be our next scholar series. Also, there is going to be information, I think, in Malaysia. We're going to have a get together, hopefully. So please, that way, we're going to be on that side of the world, inshallah ta'ala. So hopefully, my brother Dylan, I have opportunity to meet you there. May Allah reward all of you guys, and jazakallah khair. Any last few words before we close the show?
There's talk of a 50-year vision, 2050, with the Global Association of Islamic Schools. What is so inspiring is to see the level of vision, the purposefulness within our field, locally, nationally, and globally. I think we should continually renew as we do as Muslims, continually renewing our intentions. But there's never been a more exciting time to be in Islamic schooling at every level. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq, grant us tawfiq, and many openings, inshallah. May Allah accept this work as worship. All of us, of course, have in the stimulus paper, we spoke about being theocentric and student focused. And I think that captures something really important about purpose. All of this is but only for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have that in mind when we are completely focused in service to our beautiful students who are the future Ummah. This is, we're very blessed to be a part of this, and may Allah sustain us all in this effort, inshallah. Jazakallah for having me.
Jazakallah khair. May Allah bless, and all you educators everywhere, keep on doing your best. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of the rest. So Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.